Hi, I'm Patrick Sullivan. This is Recurring Insight, and for this episode, I'm going to be talking about Smokestack. So Griffin is disappointed to find out that I'm not actually talking about smokestacks from trains, but the Magic Card Smokestack, which, setting aside the fact that it very obviously doesn't pass muster by 2021 standards, has some elements of it that are actually pretty interesting and well designed as far as lock pieces go, but obviously there are some pretty big issues as well.
I have a soft spot for Smokestack, and part of that is my first successful, in quotes, FNM deck involved Smokestack in a mono red land destruction deck. So I have some familiarity playing with the card when I was very passionate about Magic. And there are some positive things here for what it is. It is not that deterministic in terms of how the card plays out, certainly as far as single card lock pieces go. The games involving it are pretty different from game to game. The timeline on the card is also fairly long. It's 4 mana, and then it really takes 2 turns from there typically for it to really start rolling downhill. And so players have a fair bit of time to sort of brace themselves, in contrast to something like Winter Orb, which is much cheaper and much more intense immediately. There's some very obvious problems with the design. It is a single card lock piece. It is really hostile towards lands and expensive cards more generally. Also, the card is 4 mana, locks the game out for several turns, and then players play on from there. So it really is conducive towards games that are very long and not particularly fun to play. Those are all really big strikes. But I think if you're going to do this sort of thing, and Magic did a lot of it more back in the day, of course, than they do now, that's not really the issue here. That's kind of just like true of lock pieces in general. My bigger criticism of Smokestack is that the player has too much agency over it. Now, that might sound like a weird thing to say. Typically you like to allow players to have agency over the cards that they're playing. But I think if you're going to have this really intense single card lock piece, it's really important for both players to sort of be playing on equal footing. And Smokestack, the fact that the player controlling it gets to choose whether or not it goes up or stays the same, means that the other player is forced to play around both chains of progress, and the player controlling Smokestack just gets to pick whatever the best option is. That actually is a bigger issue for me, I think, grading on the curve, than the fact that it's sort of a broad single lock piece that's hostile towards lands. I also wish the card was slightly more interesting in terms of the exploration. A card like Winter Orb or Howling Mine, what you decide to pair those with can be a kind of interesting exploration, either things to cheat Winter Orb or just cheap cards generally so you can play under the drawback. And Smokestack literally just counts permanents. So the way to break it is not that interesting or dynamic, just play with cards that generate multiple permanents. So Smokestack is something that I'm kind of fond of. I need to separate the fact that it speaks to an era where I was coming up as a Magic player. It isn't all bad, or as far as these sorts of designs go, with the caveat that obviously this is not a 2021 design sensibility sort of design. But to the extent that I dislike the card for what it is actually that the player controlling it has way too much agency over how it plays out, and not some of the more obvious negative characteristics.
Again, that was Smokestack, and this is Recurring Insight. Make sure to throw a like up there and a subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the Star City Games YouTube page so you can get notified when new content gets uploaded. And again, proof of concept. I know this one was a pretty frequent request up on the forum, so keep the requests coming, and I might get to your favorite card sometime soon.